the Bible's hidden second flood that changed everything. What if I told you that Noah's flood wasn't the only great deluge mentioned in ancient biblical texts? Hidden within the pages of forgotten scriptures lies evidence of another catastrophic flood that reshaped humanity's destiny. By the end of this journey, you'll understand why this second flood was deliberately obscured from mainstream biblical teaching and how it connects to the corruption that still plagues our world today. The book of Enoch, chapter 6, doesn't just describe Noah's flood as a singular event. It reveals a vision of multiple cleansings, each designed to purge the earth of specific corruptions. While Genesis gives us the familiar account in chapters 8 and 9, the book of Jubilees, chapter 5, expands this narrative with disturbing details about what happened after the waters receded. According to Jubilees, the covenant God made with Noah wasn't just about preventing future floods. It was about managing the ongoing corruption that would require additional divine interventions. The evidence becomes even more compelling when we examine the Epic of Gilgamesh, chapter 11. Utnapishtim's account mentions not one but multiple deluges sent by different gods for different purposes. The Samaritan Pentateuch, chapter 3, contains variations that mainstream translations deliberately omit. These variations describe a second cleansing that occurred generations after Noah's descendants had multiplied. Genesis chapter 10 lists the table of nations, but the book of Jubilees reveals that some of these 70 nations were themselves survivors of a secondary flood. The text specifically mentions that Nimrod's kingdom in Babylon was built not just after Noah's flood, but after another great washing that targeted the giant's bloodline. Comment which of these ancient sources surprises you most. Here's what they never tell you about this second deluge. According to the book of Enoch's extended vision, the watchers who survived the first flood had taught humanity 3 forbidden arts: metallurgy, cosmetics, and astrology. But they also revealed the secret of binding spirits to physical objects, creating the first idols with actual supernatural power. The second flood wasn't sent to destroy all life like Noah's flood. Instead, it specifically targeted the regions where these corrupted practices had taken root. The book of Jubilees describes how this selective cleansing left certain bloodlines intact, while completely erasing others from history. This explains why some ancient civilizations appear in the archaeological record with no clear origins. They were the survivors who rebuilt after the second washing. The Epic of Gilgamesh confirms this pattern, describing how Utnapishtim witnessed multiple divine judgments, each more precise than the last. The implications for our modern world are staggering. If ancient texts accurately describe a second flood that targeted specific corruptions, then the same divine pattern of selective judgment continues today. Archaeological evidence from sites like Göbekli Tepe and the underwater structures off Japan's coast suggest advanced civilizations that were suddenly submerged. These aren't remnants of Noah's flood, which covered the entire earth. These are evidence of localized catastrophes that match the descriptions in Enoch and Jubilees. The Samaritan Pentateuch's variations include geographical details that pinpoint exactly where this second flood occurred. Modern researchers have found corresponding geological evidence of massive flooding in those exact regions during the time frame these texts describe. This pattern repeats throughout history whenever humanity rediscovers the forbidden knowledge that originally corrupted the pre-flood world. But here's what changes everything. The book of Jubilees doesn't present this second flood as ancient history. It describes it as a recurring divine response to specific types of corruption. According to chapter 5, God established multiple covenants with Noah, not just the rainbow covenant we know from Genesis. One of these hidden covenants promised that whenever humanity reached the same level of corruption that required the first flood, a more targeted cleansing would follow. The ancient texts suggest we're living in the build-up to such a time. The same forbidden knowledge that corrupted the pre-flood world, metallurgy used for weapons, cosmetics for deception, and astrology for manipulation, dominates our current civilization. Genesis chapter 9 records God's promise never to destroy all life by flood again. But the book of Enoch clarifies this means no global flood like Noah's. Selective regional cleansings remain part of the divine plan. Do you believe these ancient accounts describe literal historical events, or are they symbolic warnings about spiritual corruption? If you want to explore more hidden biblical mysteries that mainstream teaching avoids, hit subscribe. Peepaw says, the greatest floods aren't always made of water. Sometimes they're made of forgotten truth, washing away comfortable lies.